Paper 46. The Local System Headquarters. Jerusalem, the headquarters of Satania, is an average capital of a local system, and aside from numerous irregularities occasioned by the Lucifer Rebellion and the bestowal of Michael on Urantia, it is typical of similar spheres. Your local system has passed through some stormy experiences, but it is at present being administered most efficiently, and as the ages pass, the results of disharmony are being slowly but surely eradicated. Order and goodwill are being restored, and the conditions on Jerusalem are more and more approaching the heavenly status of your traditions, for the system headquarters is truly the heaven visualized by the majority of 20th century religious believers. 1. Physical aspects of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is divided into 1,000 latitudinal sectors and 10,000 longitudinal zones. The sphere has 7 major capitals and 70 minor administrative centers. The 7 sectional capitals are concerned with diverse activities, and the system sovereign is present in each at least once a year. The standard mile of Jerusalem is equivalent to about 7 Urantia miles. The standard weight, the gradient, is built up through the decimal system from the mature ultimaton and represents almost exactly 10 ounces of your weight. The Satania day equals 3 days of Urantia time, less 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 15 seconds, that being the time of the axial revolution of Jerusalem. The system year consists of 100 Jerusalem days. The time of the system is broadcast by the master chronaldics. The energy of Jerusalem is superbly controlled and circulates about the sphere in the zone channels, which are directly fed from the energy charges of space and expertly administered by the master physical controllers. The natural resistance to the passage of these energies through the physical channels of conduction yields the heat required for the production of the equable temperature of Jerusalem. The full light temperature is maintained at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, while during the period of light recession it falls to a little lower than 50 degrees. The lighting system of Jerusalem should not be so difficult for you to comprehend. There are no days and nights, no seasons of heat and cold. The power transformers maintain 100,000 centers from which rarefied energies are projected upward through the planetary atmosphere, undergoing certain changes until they reach the electric air ceiling of the sphere. Then these energies are reflected back and down as a gentle, sifting, and even light of about the intensity of Urantia sunlight when the sun is shining overhead at 10 o'clock in the morning. Under such conditions of lighting, the light rays do not seem to come from one place. They just sift out of the sky, emanating equally from all space directions. This light is very similar to natural sunlight, except that it contains very much less heat. Thus it will be recognized that such headquarters worlds are not luminous in space. If Jerusalem were very near Urantia, it would not be visible. The gases, which reflect this light energy from the Jerusalem upper ionosphere back to the ground, are very similar to those in the Urantia upper air belts, which are concerned with the auroral phenomena of your so-called northern lights, although these are produced by different causes. On Urantia, it is this same gas shield which prevents the escape of the terrestrial broadcast waves, reflecting them earthward when they strike this gas belt in their direct outward flight. In this way, broadcasts are held near the surface as they journey through the air around your world. This lighting of the sphere is uniformly maintained for 75% of the Jerusalem day, and then there is a gradual recession, until at the time of minimum illumination, the light is about that of your full moon on a clear night. This is the quiet hour for all Jerusalem. Only the broadcast receiving stations are in operation during this period of rest and rehabilitation. Jerusalem receives faint light from several nearby suns, a sort of brilliant starlight, but it is not dependent on them. Worlds like Jerusalem are not subject to the vicissitudes of sun disturbances. neither are they confronted with the problem of a cooling or dying sun. The 7 transitional study worlds and their 49 satellites are heated, lighted, energized, and watered by the Jerusalem technique. 2. Physical features of Jerusalem. On Jerusalem you will miss the rugged mountain ranges of Urantia and other evolved worlds, since there are neither earthquakes nor rainfalls, but you will enjoy the beauteous highlands and other unique variations of topography and landscape. Enormous areas of Jerusalem are preserved in a natural state, and the grandeur of such districts is quite beyond the powers of human imagination. There are thousands upon thousands of small lakes, but no raging rivers nor expansive oceans. There is no rainfall, neither storms nor blizzards, on any of the architectural worlds, but there is the daily precipitation of the condensation of moisture during the time of lowest temperature attending the light recession. The dew point is higher on a 3-gas world than on a 2-gas planet like Urantia. The physical plant life and the Urantia world of living things both require moisture, but this is largely supplied by the subsoil system of circulation which extends all over the sphere, even up to the very tops of the highlands. This water system is not entirely subsurface, for there are many canals interconnecting the sparkling lakes of Jerusalem. The atmosphere of Jerusalem is a 3-gas mixture. This air is very similar to that of Urantia, with the addition of a gas adapted to the respiration of the Urantia order of life. This 3rd gas in no way unfits the air for the respiration of animals or plants of the material orders. The transportation system is allied with the circulatory streams of energy movement, these main energy currents being located at 10-mile intervals. By adjustment of physical mechanisms, the material beings of the planet can proceed at a pace varying from 2 to 500 miles per hour. The transport birds fly at about 100 miles an hour. The air mechanisms of the material suns travel around 500 miles per hour. Material and early Urantia beings must utilize these mechanical means of transport, but spirit personalities proceed by liaison with the superior forces and spirit sources of energy. Jerusalem and its associated worlds are endowed with the 10 standard divisions of physical life characteristic of the architectural spheres of Nebadon. And since there is no organic evolution on Jerusalem, there are no conflicting forms of life, no struggle for existence, no survival of the fittest. Rather is there a creative adaptation which foreshadows the beauty, the harmony, and the perfection of the eternal worlds of the central and divine universe. And in all this creative perfection, there is the most amazing intermingling of physical and of Urantia life, artistically contrasted by the celestial artisans and their fellows. Jerusalem is indeed a foretaste of paradisiacal glory and grandeur. But you can never hope to gain an adequate idea of these glorious architectural worlds by any attempted description. There is so little that can be compared with aught on your world, and even then, the things of Jerusalem so transcend the things of Urantia that the comparison is almost grotesque. Until you actually arrive on Jerusalem, you can hardly entertain anything like a true concept of the heavenly worlds. But that is not so long a time in the future, when your coming experience on the system capital is compared with your sometime arrival on the more remote training spheres of the universe, the superuniverse, and of Havona. The manufacturing or laboratory sector of Jerusalem is an extensive domain, one which Urantians would hardly recognize, since it has no smoking chimneys. Nevertheless, there is an intricate material economy associated with these special worlds, and there is a perfection of mechanical technique and physical achievement which would astonish and even awe your most experienced chemists and inventors. Pause to consider that this first world of detention in the Paradise journey is far more material than spiritual. Throughout your stay on Jerusalem and its transition worlds, you are far nearer your earth life of material things than your later life of advancing spirit existence. Mount Seraph is the highest elevation on Jerusalem, almost 15,000 feet, and is the point of departure for all transport seraphim. Numerous mechanical developments are used in providing initial energy for escaping the planetary gravity and overcoming the air resistance. A seraphic transport departs every 3 seconds of Urantia time throughout the light period, and sometimes far into the recession. The transporters take off at about 25 standard miles per second of Urantia time and do not attain standard velocity until they are over 2,000 miles away from Jerusalem. Transports arrive on the crystal field, the so-called Sea of Glass. Around this area are the receiving stations for the various orders of beings who traverse space by seraphic transport. Near the Polar Crystal Receiving Station for student visitors, you may ascend the Pearly Observatory and view the immense relief map of the entire headquarters planet. 3. The Jerusalem Broadcasts. The Superuniverse and Paradise Havona broadcasts are received on Jerusalem in liaison with Salvington and by a technique involving the polar crystal, the Sea of Glass. In addition to provisions for the reception of these extra-Nebadon communications, there are 3 distinct groups of receiving stations. These separate but tricircular groups of stations are adjusted to the reception of broadcasts from the local worlds, from the constellation headquarters, and from the capital of the local universe. All these broadcasts are automatically displayed so as to be discernible by all types of beings present in the central broadcast amphitheater. Of all preoccupations for an ascendant mortal on Jerusalem, none is more engaging and engrossing than that of listening in on the never-ending stream of universe space reports. This Jerusalem broadcast receiving station is encircled by an enormous amphitheater, constructed of scintillating materials largely unknown on Urantia, and seating over 5 billion beings, material and Morantia, besides accommodating innumerable spirit personalities. It is the favorite diversion for all Jerusalem to spend their leisure at the broadcast station, there to learn of the welfare and state of the universe. And this is the only planetary activity which is not slowed down during the recession of light. At this broadcast receiving amphitheater, the Salvington messages are coming in continuously. Nearby, the Urantia word of the Most High Constellation Fathers is received at least once a day. Periodically, the regular and special broadcasts of Uversa are relayed through Salvington, and when Paradise messages are in reception, the entire population is assembled around the Sea of Glass, and the Uversa friends add the reflectivity phenomena to the technique of the Paradise broadcast, so that everything heard becomes visible. And it is in this manner that continual foretastes of advancing beauty and grandeur are afforded the mortal survivors as they journey inward on the eternal adventure. The Jerusalem sending station is located at the opposite pole of the sphere. All broadcasts to the individual worlds are relayed from the system capitals except the Michael messages, which sometimes go direct to their destinations over the Archangel's circuit. 4. Residential and administrative areas. Considerable portions of Jerusalem are assigned as residential areas, while other portions of the system capital are given over to the necessary administrative functions involving the supervision of the affairs of 619 inhabited spheres, 56 transitional culture worlds, and the system capital itself. On Jerusalem and in Nebadon, these arrangements are designed as follows. 1. The circles, the non-native residential areas. 2. The squares, the system executive administrative areas. 3. The rectangles, the rendezvous of the lower native life. 4. The triangles, the local or Jerusalem administrative areas. This arrangement of the system activities into circles, squares, rectangles, and triangles is common to all the system capitals of Nebadon. In another universe, an entirely different arrangement might prevail. These are matters determined by the diverse plans of the Creator's sons. Our narrative of these residential and administrative areas takes no account of the vast and beautiful estates of the material sons of God, the permanent citizens of Jerusalem. Neither do we mention numerous other fascinating orders of spirit and near-spirit creatures. For example, Jerusalem enjoys the efficient services of the Sparanga of design for system function. These beings are devoted to spiritual ministry in behalf of the supermaterial residents and visitors. They are a wonderful group of intelligent and beautiful beings who are the transition servants of the higher Urantia creatures and of the Urantia helpers who labor for the upkeep and embellishment of all Urantia creations. They are on Jerusalem what the midway creatures are on Urantia, midway helpers functioning between the material and the spiritual. The system capitals are unique in that they are the only worlds which exhibit well-nigh perfectly all three phases of universe existence, the material, the Urantial, and the spiritual. Whether you are a material, Urantia, or spirit personality, you will feel at home on Jerusalem. So also do the combined beings, such as the midway creatures and the material sons. Jerusalem has great buildings of both material and Urantia types, while the embellishment of the purely spiritual zones is no less exquisite and replete. If I only had words to tell you of the Urantia counterparts of the marvelous physical equipment of Jerusalem, if I could only go on to portray the sublime grandeur and exquisite perfection of the spiritual appointments of this headquarters world, your most imaginative concept of perfection of beauty and repleteness of appointment would hardly approach these grandeurs. And Jerusalem is but the first step on the way to the supernal perfection of paradise beauty. 5. The Jerusalem Circles. The residential reservations assigned to the major groups of universe life are designated the Jerusalem Circles. Those circle groups which find mention in these narratives are the following. 1. The circles of the sons of God. 2. The circles of the angels and higher spirits. 3. The circles of the universe aids, including the creature trinitized sons not assigned to the Trinity teacher sons. 4. The circles of the master physical controllers. 5. The circles of the assigned ascending mortals, including the midway creatures. 6. The circles of the courtesy colonies. 7. The circles of the core of the finality. Each of these residential groupings consists of 7 concentric and successively elevated circles. They are all constructed along the same lines, but are of different sizes and are fashioned of differing materials. They are all surrounded by far-reaching enclosures, which mount up to form extensive promenades entirely encompassing every group of 7 concentric circles. 1. Circles of the Sons of God. Though the sons of God possess a social planet of their own, one of the transitional culture worlds, they also occupy these extensive domains on Jerusalem. On their transitional culture world, the ascending mortals freely mingle with all orders of divine sonship. There you will personally know and love these sons. But their social life is largely confined to this special world and its satellites. In the Jerusalem circles, however, these various groups of sonship may be observed at work. And since Urantia vision is of enormous range, you can walk about on the sun's promenades and overlook the intriguing activities of their numerous orders. These 7 circles of the suns are concentric and successively elevated so that each of the outer and larger circles overlooks the inner and smaller ones, each being surrounded by a public promenade wall. These walls are constructed of crystal gems of gleaming brightness, and are so elevated as to overlook all of their respective residential circles. The many gates, from 50 to 150,000, which penetrate each of these walls, consist of single pearly crystals. The first circle of the domain of the sons is occupied by the magisterial sons and their personal staffs. Here center all of the plans and immediate activities of the bestowal and adjudicational services of these juridical sons. It is also through this center that the avenals of the system maintain contact with the universe. The second circle is occupied by the Trinity teacher sons. In this sacred domain, the Danels and their associates carry forward the training of the newly arrived primary teacher sons. And in all of this work, they are ably assisted by a division of certain coordinates of the brilliant evening stars. The creature trinitized sons occupy a sector of the Danel circle. The Trinity teacher sons come the nearest to being the personal representatives of the Universal Father in a local system. They are at least Trinity origin beings. This second circle is a domain of extraordinary interest to all the peoples of Jerusalem. The third circle is devoted to the Melchizedeks. Here, the system chiefs reside and supervise the almost endless activities of these versatile sons. From the first of the mansion worlds on through all the Jerusalem career of ascending mortals, the Melchizedeks are foster fathers and ever-present advisers. It would not be amiss to say that they are the dominant influence on Jerusalem, aside from the ever-present activities of the material sons and daughters. The fourth circle is the home of the Verandadeks and all other orders of the visiting and observer sons who are not otherwise provided for. The Most High Constellation Fathers take up their abode in this circle when on visits of inspection to the local system. Perfecters of wisdom, divine counselors, and universal censors all reside in this circle when on duty in the system. The fifth circle is the abode of the Lananandeks, the sonship order of the system's sovereigns and the planetary princes. The three groups mingle as one when at home in this domain. The system reserves are held in this circle, while the system sovereign has a temple situated at the center of the governing group of structures on Administration Hill. The sixth circle is the tarrying place of the system life carriers. All orders of these sons are here assembled, and from here they go forth on their world assignments. The seventh circle is the rendezvous of the ascending sons, those assigned mortals who may be temporarily functioning on the system headquarters together with their seraphic consorts. All ex-mortals above the status of Jerusalem citizens and below that of finaliters are reckoned as belonging to the group having its headquarters in this circle. These circular reservations of the sons occupy an enormous area, and until 1900 years ago, there existed a great open space at its center. This central region is now occupied by the Michael Memorial, completed some 500 years ago. 495 years ago, when this temple was dedicated, Michael was present in person, and all Jerusalem heard the touching story of the Master's son's bestowal on Urantia, the least of Satania. The Michael Memorial is now the center of all activities embraced in the modified management of the system occasioned by Michael's bestowal, including most of the more recently transplanted Salvington activities. The memorial staff consists of over 1 million personalities. 2. The circles of the angels. Like the residential area of the sons, these circles of the angels consist of 7 concentric and successively elevated circles, each overlooking the inner areas. The first circle of the angels is occupied by the higher personalities of the infinite spirit who may be stationed on the headquarters world, solitary messengers, and their associates. The second circle is dedicated to the messenger hosts, technical advisors, companions, inspectors, and recorders, as they may chance to function on Jerusalem from time to time. The third circle is held by the ministering spirits of the higher orders and groupings. The fourth circle is held by the administrator seraphim, and the seraphim serving in a local system like Satania are an innumerable host of angels. The fifth circle is occupied by the planetary seraphim, while the sixth is the home of the transition ministers. The seventh circle is the tarrying sphere of certain unrevealed orders of seraphim. The recorders of all these groups of angels do not sojourn with their fellows, being domiciled in the Jerusalem Temple of Records. All records are preserved in triplicate in this threefold hall of archives. On a system headquarters, records are always preserved in material, in Urantia, and in spirit form. These 7 circles are surrounded by the exhibit panorama of Jerusalem, 5,000 standard miles in circumference, which is devoted to the presentation of the advancing status of the peopled worlds of Satania, and is constantly revised so as to truly represent up-to-date conditions on the individual planets. I doubt not that this vast promenade overlooking the circles of the angels will be the first sight of Jerusalem to claim your attention when you are permitted extended leisure on your earlier visits. These exhibits are in charge of the native life of Jerusalem, but they are assisted by the ascenders from the various Satania worlds who are tarrying on Jerusalem en route to Urantia. The portrayal of planetary conditions and world progress is effected by many methods, some known to you, but mostly by techniques unknown on Urantia. These exhibits occupy the outer edge of this vast wall. The remainder of the promenade is almost entirely open, being highly and magnificently embellished. 3. The circles of the universe aids have the headquarters of the evening stars situated in the enormous central space. Here is located the system headquarters of Urantia, the associate head of this powerful group of super angels, being the first commissioned of all the ascendant evening stars. This is one of the most magnificent of all the administrative sectors of Jerusalem, even though it is among the more recent constructions. This center is 50 miles in diameter. The Urantia headquarters is a monolithic cast crystal, wholly transparent. These material Urantia crystals are greatly appreciated by both Urantia and material beings. The created evening stars exert their influence all over Jerusalem, being possessed of such extra-personality attributes. The entire world has been rendered spiritually fragrant since so many of their activities were transferred here from Salvington. 4. The circles of the master physical controllers. The various orders of the master physical controllers are concentrically arranged around the vast temple of power, wherein presides the power chief of the system in association with the chief of the Urantia power supervisors. This temple of power is one of 2 sectors on Jerusalem where ascending mortals and midway creatures are not permitted. The other one is the dematerializing sector in the area of the material suns, a series of laboratories wherein the transport seraphim transform material beings into a state quite like that of the Urantia order of existence. 5. The circles of the ascending mortals. The central area of the circles of the ascending mortals is occupied by a group of 619 planetary memorials representative of the inhabited worlds of the system, and these structures periodically undergo extensive changes. It is the privilege of the mortals from each world to agree, from time to time, upon certain of the alterations or additions to their planetary memorials. Many changes are even now being made in the Urantia structures. The center of these 619 temples is occupied by a working model of Urantia and its many worlds of ascendant culture. This model is 40 miles in diameter and is an actual reproduction of the Urantia system, true to the original in every detail. Ascenders enjoy their Jerusalem services and take pleasure in observing the techniques of other groups. Everything done in these various circles is open to the full observation of all Jerusalem. The activities of such a world are of 3 distinct varieties: work, progress, and play. Stated otherwise, they are service, study, and relaxation. The composite activities consist of social intercourse, group entertainment, and divine worship. There is great educational value in mingling with diverse groups of personalities, orders very different from one's own fellows. 6. The circles of the courtesy colonies. The 7 circles of the courtesy colonies are graced by 3 enormous structures: the vast astronomic observatory of Jerusalem, the gigantic art gallery of Satania, and the immense assembly hall of the reversion directors, the theater of Urantia activities devoted to rest and recreation. The celestial artisans direct the spornagia and provide the host of creative decorations and monumental memorials which abound in every place of public assembly. The studios of these artisans are among the largest and most beautiful of all the matchless structures of this wonderful world. The other courtesy colonies maintain extensive and beautiful headquarters. Many of these buildings are constructed wholly of crystal gems. All the architectural worlds abound in crystals and the so-called precious metals. 7. The circles of the finalators have a unique structure at the center, and this same vacant temple is found on every system headquarters world throughout Nebadon. This edifice on Jerusalem is sealed with the insignia of Michael, and it bears this inscription: "Undedicated to the 7th stage of spirit, to the eternal assignment." Gabriel placed the seal on this temple of mystery, and none but Michael can or may break the seal of sovereignty affixed by the bright and morning star. Some day you shall look upon this silent temple, even though you may not penetrate its mystery. Other Jerusalem circles. In addition to these residential circles, there are on Jerusalem numerous additional designated abodes. 6. The executive administrative squares. The executive administrative divisions of the system are located in the immense departmental squares, 1,000 in number. Each administrative unit is divided into 100 subdivisions of 10 subgroups each. These 1,000 squares are clustered in 10 grand divisions, thus constituting the following 10 administrative departments. 1. Physical maintenance and material improvement, the domains of physical power and energy. 2. Arbitration, ethics, and administrative adjudication. 3. Planetary and local affairs. 4. Constellation and universe affairs. 5. Education and other Melchizedek activities. 6. Planetary and system physical progress, the scientific domains of Satania activities. 7. Urantia affairs. 8. Pure spirit activities and ethics. 9. Ascendant ministry. 10. Grand universe philosophy. These structures are transparent, hence all system activities can be viewed even by student visitors. 7. The rectangles, the spornagia. The 1,000 rectangles of Jerusalem are occupied by the lower native life of the headquarters planet, and at their center is situated the vast circular headquarters of the spornagia. On Jerusalem you will be amazed by the agricultural achievements of the wonderful spornagia. There the land is cultivated largely for aesthetic and ornamental effects. The spornagia are the landscape gardeners of the headquarters worlds, and they are both original and artistic in their treatment of the open spaces of Jerusalem. They utilize both animals and numerous mechanical contrivances in the culture of the soil. They are intelligently expert in the employment of the power agencies of their realms, as well as in the utilization of numerous orders of their lesser brethren of the lower animal creations, many of which are provided them on these special worlds. This order of animal life is now largely directed by the ascending midway creatures from the evolutionary spheres. Spornagia are not, adjuster indwelt. They do not possess survival souls, but they do enjoy long lives, sometimes to the extent of 40 to 50,000 standard years. Their number is legion, and they afford physical ministry to all orders of universe personalities requiring material service. Although Spornagia neither possess nor evolve survival souls, though they do not have personality, nevertheless, they do evolve an individuality which can experience reincarnation. When with the passing of time the physical bodies of these unique creatures deteriorate from usage and age, their creators, in collaboration with the life carriers, fabricate new bodies in which the old Spornagia re-establish their residences. Spornagia are the only creatures in all the universe of Nebadon who experience this or any other sort of reincarnation. They are only reactive to the first 5 of the adjutant mind spirits. They are not responsive to the spirits of worship and wisdom. But the 5 adjutant mind equivalates to a totality or 6th reality level, and it is this factor which persists as an experiential identity. I am quite without comparisons in undertaking to describe these useful and unusual creatures, as there are no animals on the evolutionary worlds comparable to them. They are not evolutionary beings, having been projected by the life carriers in their present form and status. They are bisexual and procreate as they are required to meet the needs of a growing population. Perhaps I can best suggest to Urantia minds something of the nature of these beautiful and serviceable creatures by saying that they embrace the combined traits of a faithful horse and an affectionate dog, and manifest an intelligence exceeding that of the highest type of chimpanzee. And they are very beautiful, as judged by the physical standards of Urantia. They are most appreciative of the attentions shown them by the material and semi-material sojourners on these architectural worlds. They have a vision which permits them to recognize, in addition to material beings, the Urantia creations, the lower angelic orders, midway creatures, and some of the lower orders of spirit personalities. They do not comprehend worship of the infinite, nor do they grasp the import of the eternal. But they do, through affection for their masters, join in the outward spiritual devotions of their realms. There are those who believe that in a future universe age, these faithful Spornagia will escape from their animal level of existence and attain a worthy evolutional destiny of progressive intellectual growth and even spiritual achievement. 8. The Jerusalem Triangles. The purely local and routine affairs of Jerusalem are directed from the 100 triangles. These units are clustered around the 10 marvelous structures domiciling the local administration of Jerusalem. The triangles are surrounded by the panoramic depiction of the system headquarters history. At present there is an erasure of over 2 standard miles in this circular story. This sector will be restored upon the readmission of Satania into the constellation family. Every provision for this event has been made by the decrees of Michael, but the tribunal of the Ancients of Days has not yet finished the adjudication of the affairs of the Lucifer rebellion. Satania may not come back into the full fellowship of Norlashadek so long as it harbors arch-rebels, high created beings who have fallen from light into darkness. When Satania can return to the constellation fold, then will come up for consideration the readmission of the isolated worlds into the system family of inhabited planets, accompanied by their restoration to the spiritual communion of the realms. But even if Urantia were restored to the system circuits, you would still be embarrassed by the fact that your whole system rests under a Norlashadek quarantine, partially segregating it from all other systems. But ere long the adjudication of Lucifer and his associates will restore the Satania system to the Norlashadek constellation, and subsequently Urantia, and the other isolated spheres will be restored to the Satania circuits. And again will such worlds enjoy the privileges of interplanetary communication and inter-system communion. There will come an end for rebels and rebellion. The supreme rulers are merciful and patient, but the law of deliberately nourished evil is universally and unerringly executed. The wages of sin is death, eternal obliteration.
Presented by an Archangel of Nebadon.
Paper 47, The Seven Mansion Worlds. The Creator's Son, when on Urantia, spoke of the many mansions in the Father's universe. In a certain sense, all 56 of the encircling worlds of Jerusalem are devoted to the transitional culture of ascending mortals. But the 7 satellites of world number 1 are more specifically known as the Mansion Worlds. Transition world number 1 itself is quite exclusively devoted to ascendant activities, being the headquarters of the Finaliter Corps assigned to Satania. This world now serves as the headquarters for more than 100,000 companies of Finaliters, and there are 1,000 glorified beings in each of these groups. When a system is settled in light and life, and as the mansion worlds one by one cease to serve as mortal training stations, they are taken over by the increasing Finaliter population, which accumulates in these older and more highly perfected systems. The 7 mansion worlds are in the charge of the Urantia supervisors and the Melchizedeks. There is an acting governor on each world who is directly responsible to the Jerusalem rulers. The Uversa conciliators maintain headquarters on each of the mansion worlds, while adjoining is the local rendezvous of the technical advisors. The reversion directors and celestial artisans maintain group headquarters on each of these worlds. The Spiranga function from mansion world number 2 onward, while all 7, in common with the other transitional culture planets and the headquarters world, are abundantly provided with spornagia of standard creation. 1. The Finaliters world. Although only Finaliters and certain groups of salvaged children and their caretakers are resident on transitional world number 1, provision is made for the entertainment of all classes of spirit beings, transitional mortals, and student visitors. The Spornagia, who function on all of these worlds, are hospitable hosts to all beings whom they can recognize. They have a vague feeling concerning the Finaliters, but cannot visualize them. They must regard them much as you do the angels in your present physical state. Though the Finaliter world is a sphere of exquisite physical beauty and extraordinary Urantia embellishment, the great spirit abode located at the center of activities, the temple of the Finaliters, is not visible to the unaided material or early Urantia vision. But the energy transformers are able to visualize many of these realities to ascending mortals, and from time to time they do thus function, as on the occasions of the class assemblies of the Mansion World students on this cultural sphere. All through the Mansion World experience, you are in a way spiritually aware of the presence of your glorified brethren of paradise attainment, but it is very refreshing now and then actually to perceive them as they function in their headquarters abodes. You will not spontaneously visualize Finaliters until you acquire true spirit vision. On the first mansion world, all survivors must pass the requirements of the Parental Commission from their native planets. The present Urantia Commission consists of 12 parental couples recently arrived who have had mortal experience in rearing 3 or more children to the pubescent age. Service on this commission is rotational and is for only 10 years as a rule. All who fail to satisfy these commissioners as to their parental experience must further qualify by service in the homes of the material sons on Jerusalem, or, in part, in the probationary nursery on the Finaliters world. But irrespective of parental experience, mansion world parents who have growing children in the probation nursery are given every opportunity to collaborate with the Urantia custodians of such children regarding their instruction and training. These parents are permitted to journey there for visits as often as 4 times a year, and it is one of the most touchingly beautiful scenes of all the ascending career to observe the mansion world parents embrace their material offspring on the occasions of their periodic pilgrimages to the finaliter world. While one or both parents may leave a mansion world ahead of the child, they are quite often contemporary for a season. No ascending mortal can escape the experience of rearing children, their own or others, either on the material worlds or subsequently on the finaliter world or on Jerusalem. Fathers must pass through this essential experience just as certainly as mothers. It is an unfortunate and mistaken notion of modern peoples on Urantia that child culture is largely the task of mothers. Children need fathers as well as mothers, and fathers need this parental experience as much as do mothers. 2. The probationary nursery. The infant receiving schools of Satania are situated on the finaliter world, the first of the Jerusalem transition culture spheres. These infant receiving schools are enterprises devoted to the nurture and training of the children of time, including those who have died on the evolutionary worlds of space before the acquirement of individual status on the universe records. In the event of the survival of either or both of such a child's parents, the guardian of destiny deputizes her associated cherubim as the custodian of the child's potential identity, charging the cherubim with the responsibility of delivering this undeveloped soul into the hands of the mansion world teachers in the probationary nurseries of the Urantia worlds. It is these same deserted cherubim who, as mansion world teachers under the supervision of the Melchizedeks, maintain such extensive educational facilities for the training of the probationary wards of the finaliters. These wards of the finaliters, these infants of ascending mortals, are always personalized as of their exact physical status at the time of death, except for reproductive potential. This awakening occurs at the exact time of the parental arrival on the first mansion world, and then are these children given every opportunity, as they are, to choose the heavenly way, just as they would have made such a choice on the worlds where death so untimely terminated their careers. On the nursery world, probationary creatures are grouped according to whether or not they have adjusters, for the adjusters come to indwell these material children just as on the worlds of time. Children of pre-adjuster ages are cared for in families of 5, ranging in ages from 1 year and under up to approximately 5 years, or that age when the adjuster arrives. All children on the evolving worlds who have thought adjusters, but who before death had not made a choice concerning the paradise career, are also repersonalized on the finaliter world of the system, where they likewise grow up in the families of the material sons and their associates, as do those little ones who arrived without adjusters, but who will subsequently receive the mystery monitors after attaining the requisite age of moral choice. The adjuster indwelt children and youths on the finaliter world are also reared in families of 5, ranging in ages from 6 to 14. Approximately, these families consist of children whose ages are 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. Any time after 16, if final choice has been made, they translate to the first mansion world and begin their paradise ascent. Some make a choice before this age and go on to the ascension spheres, but very few children under 16 years of age, as reckoned by Urantia standards, will be found on the mansion worlds. The guardian seraphim attend these youths in the probationary nursery on the finaliter world, just as they spiritually minister to mortals on the evolutionary planets, while the faithful spornagia minister to their physical necessities. and so do these children grow up on the transition world until such time as they make their final choice. When material life has run its course, if no choice has been made for the ascendant life, or if these children of time definitely decide against the Havona adventure, death automatically terminates their probationary careers. There is no adjudication of such cases. There is no resurrection from such a second death. They simply become as though they had not been. But if they choose the paradise path of perfection, they are immediately made ready for translation to the first mansion world, where many of them arrive in time to join their parents in the Havona ascent. After passing through Havona and attaining the deities, these salvaged souls of mortal origin constitute the permanent ascendant citizenship of paradise. These children who have been deprived of the valuable and essential evolutionary experience on the worlds of mortal nativity are not mustered into the core of the finality. 3. The first mansion world. On the mansion worlds, the resurrected mortal survivors resume their lives just where they left off when overtaken by death. When you go from Urantia to the first mansion world, you will notice considerable change, but if you had come from a more normal and progressive sphere of time, you would hardly notice the difference, except for the fact that you were in possession of a different body. The tabernacle of flesh and blood has been left behind on the world of nativity. The very center of all activities on the first mansion world is the Resurrection Hall, the enormous temple of personality assembly. This gigantic structure consists of the central rendezvous of the seraphic destiny guardians, the thought adjusters, and the archangels of the resurrection. The life carriers also function with these celestial beings in the resurrection of the dead. The mortal mind transcripts and the active creature memory patterns as transformed from the material levels to the spiritual are the individual possession of the detached thought adjusters. These spiritized factors of mind, memory, and creature personality are forever a part of such adjusters. The creature mind matrix and the passive potentials of identity are present in the Urantia soul entrusted to the keeping of the seraphic destiny guardians. And it is the reuniting of the Urantia soul trust of the seraphim and the spirit mind trust of the adjuster that reassembles creature personality and constitutes resurrection of a sleeping survivor. If a transitory personality of mortal origin should never be thus reassembled, the spirit elements of the non-surviving mortal creature would forever continue as an integral part of the individual experiential endowment of the one-time indwelling adjuster. From the temple of new life, there extend 7 radial wings, the resurrection halls of the mortal races. Each of these structures is devoted to the assembly of one of the 7 races of time. There are 100,000 personal resurrection chambers in each of these 7 wings, terminating in the circular class assembly halls, which serve as the awakening chambers for as many as 1 million individuals. These halls are surrounded by the personality assembly chambers of the blended races of the normal post-Adamic worlds. Regardless of the technique which may be employed on the individual worlds of time in connection with special or dispensational resurrections, the real and conscious reassembly of actual and complete personality takes place in the resurrection halls of Mansonia number 1. Throughout all eternity, you will recall the profound memory impressions of your first witnessing of these resurrection mornings. From the resurrection halls, you proceed to the Melchizedek sector, where you are assigned permanent residence. Then you enter upon 10 days of personal liberty. You are free to explore the immediate vicinity of your new home and to familiarize yourself with the program which lies immediately ahead. You also have time to gratify your desire to consult the registry and call upon your loved ones and other earth friends who may have preceded you to these worlds. At the end of your 10-day period of leisure, you begin the second step in the Paradise journey, for the mansion worlds are actual training spheres, not merely detention planets. On Mansion World number 1, or another in case of advanced status, you will resume your intellectual training and spiritual development at the exact level whereon they were interrupted by death. Between the time of planetary death, or translation and resurrection on the mansion world, mortal man gains absolutely nothing aside from experiencing the fact of survival. You begin over there, right where you leave off down here. Almost the entire experience of Mansion World number 1 pertains to deficiency ministry. Survivors arriving on this first of the detention spheres present so many and such varied defects of creature character and deficiencies of mortal experience that the major activities of the realm are occupied with the correction and cure of these manifold legacies of the life in the flesh on the material evolutionary worlds of time and space. The sojourn on Mansion World number 1 is designed to develop mortal survivors at least up to the status of the post-Adamic dispensation on the normal evolutionary worlds. Spiritually, of course, the Mansion World students are far in advance of such a state of mere human development. If you are not to be detained on Mansion World number 1, at the end of 10 days you will enter the translation sleep and proceed to world number 2. And every 10 days thereafter, you will thus advance until you arrive on the world of your assignment. The center of the 7 major circles of the first Mansion World administration is occupied by the Temple of the Urantia Companions, the personal guides assigned to ascending mortals. These companions are the offspring of the local universe Mother Spirit, and there are several million of them on the Urantia worlds of Satania. Aside from those assigned as group companions, you will have much to do with the interpreters and translators, the building custodians, and the excursion supervisors. And all of these companions are most cooperative with those who have to do with developing your personality factors of mind and spirit within the Urantia body. As you start out on the first mansion world, one Urantia companion is assigned to each company of 1,000 ascending mortals, but you will encounter larger numbers as you progress through the 7 mansion spheres. These beautiful and versatile beings are companionable associates and charming guides. They are free to accompany individuals or selected groups to any of the transition culture spheres, including their satellite worlds. They are the excursion guides and leisure associates of all ascending mortals. They often accompany survivor groups on periodic visits to Jerusalem, and on any day you are there, you can go to the registry sector of the system capital and meet ascending mortals from all 7 of the mansion worlds, since they freely journey back and forth between their residential abodes and the system headquarters. 4. The second mansion world. It is on this sphere that you are more fully inducted into the Mansonia life. The groupings of the Urantia life begin to take form. Working groups and social organizations start to function, communities take on formal proportions, and the advancing mortals inaugurate new social orders and governmental arrangements. Spirit-fused survivors occupy the mansion worlds in common with the adjuster-fused ascending mortals. While the various orders of celestial life differ, they are all friendly and fraternal. In all the worlds of ascension, you will find nothing comparable to human intolerance and the discriminations of inconsiderate caste systems. As you ascend the mansion worlds one by one, they become more crowded with the Urantia activities of advancing survivors. As you go forward, you will recognize more and more of the Jerusalem features added to the mansion worlds. The Sea of Glass makes its appearance on the second Mansonia. A newly developed and suitably adjusted Urantia body is acquired at the time of each advance from one mansion world to another. you go to sleep with the seraphic transport and awake with the new but undeveloped body in the resurrection halls, much as when you first arrived on Mansion World number 1, except that the thought adjuster does not leave you during these transit sleeps between the mansion worlds. Your personality remains intact after you once pass from the evolutionary worlds to the initial mansion world. Your adjuster memory remains fully intact as you ascend the Urantia life. Those mental associations that were purely animalistic and wholly material naturally perished with the physical brain, but everything in your mental life which was worthwhile and which had survival value was counterparted by the adjuster and is retained as a part of personal memory all the way through the ascendant career. You will be conscious of all your worthwhile experiences as you advance from one mansion world to another and from one section of the universe to another, even to paradise. Though you have Urantia bodies, you continue through all 7 of these worlds to eat, drink, and rest. You partake of the Urantia order of food, a kingdom of living energy unknown on the material worlds. Both food and water are fully utilized in the Urantia body. There is no residual waste. Pause to consider. Mansonia number 1 is a very material sphere, presenting the early beginnings of the Urantia regime. You are still a near human and not far removed from the limited viewpoints of mortal life, but each world discloses definite progress. From sphere to sphere, you grow less material, more intellectual, and slightly more spiritual. The spiritual progress is greatest on the last 3 of these 7 progressive worlds. Biological deficiencies were largely made up on the first mansion world. There, defects in planetary experiences pertaining to sex life, family association, and parental function were either corrected or were projected for future rectification among the material sun families on Jerusalem. Mansonia number 2 more specifically provides for the removal of all phases of intellectual conflict and for the cure of all varieties of mental disharmony. The effort to master the significance of Urantia Mota, begun on the first mansion world, is here more earnestly continued. The development on Mansonia number 2 compares with the intellectual status of the post-magisterial sun culture of the ideal evolutionary worlds. 5. The third mansion world. Mansonia III is the headquarters of the mansion world teachers. Though they function on all 7 of the mansion spheres, they maintain their group headquarters at the center of the school circles of world number 3. There are millions of these instructors on the mansion and higher Urantia worlds. These advanced and glorified cherubim serve as Urantia teachers all the way up from the mansion worlds to the last sphere of local universe ascendant training. They will be among the last to bid you an affectionate adieu when the farewell time draws near, the time when you bid goodbye, at least for a few ages, to the universe of your origin, when you enseraphim for transit to the receiving worlds of the minor sector of the super-universe. When sojourning on the first mansion world, you have permission to visit the first of the transition worlds, the headquarters of the Finalitors, and the system probationary nursery for the nurture of undeveloped evolutionary children. When you arrive on Mansonia number 2, you receive permission periodically to visit Transition World number 2, where are located the Urantia Supervisor headquarters for all Satania, and the training schools for the various Urantia orders. When you reach Mansion World number 3, you are immediately granted a permit to visit the third transition sphere, the headquarters of the angelic orders and the home of their various system training schools. Visits to Jerusalem from this world are increasingly profitable and are of ever-heightening interest to the advancing mortals. Mansonia III is a world of great personal and social achievement for all who have not made the equivalent of these circles of culture prior to release from the flesh on the mortal nativity worlds. On this sphere, more positive educational work is begun. The training of the first two mansion worlds is mostly of a deficiency nature, negative, in that it has to do with supplementing the experience of the life in the flesh. On this third mansion world, the survivors really begin their progressive Urantia culture. The chief purpose of this training is to enhance the understanding of the correlation of Urantia mota and mortal logic, the coordination of Urantia mota and human philosophy. Surviving mortals now gain practical insight into true metaphysics. This is the real introduction to the intelligent comprehension of cosmic meanings and universe interrelationships. The culture of the third mansion world partakes of the nature of the post-bestowal sun age of a normal inhabited planet. 6. The fourth mansion world. When you arrive on the fourth mansion world, you have well entered upon the Urantia career. You have progressed a long way from the initial material existence. Now are you given permission to make visits to transition world number 4, there to become familiar with the headquarters and training schools of the super angels, including the brilliant evening stars. Through the good offices of these super angels of the fourth transition world, the Urantia visitors are enabled to draw very close to the various orders of the sons of God during the periodic visits to Jerusalem. For new sectors of the system capital are gradually opening up to the advancing mortals as they make these repeated visits to the headquarters world. New grandeurs are progressively unfolding to the expanding minds of these ascenders. On the fourth Mansonia, the individual ascender more fittingly finds his place in the group working and class functions of the Urantia life. Ascenders here develop increased appreciation of the broadcasts and other phases of local universe culture and progress. It is during the period of training on world number 4 that the ascending mortals are really first introduced to the demands and delights of the true social life of Urantia creatures. And it is indeed a new experience for evolutionary creatures to participate in social activities which are predicated neither on personal aggrandizement nor on self-seeking conquest. A new social order is being introduced, one based on the understanding sympathy of mutual appreciation, the unselfish love of mutual service, and the overmastering motivation of the realization of a common and supreme destiny, the paradise goal of worshipful and divine perfection. Ascenders are all becoming self-conscious of God-knowing, God-revealing, God-seeking, and God-finding. The intellectual and social culture of this fourth mansion world is comparable to the mental and social life of the post-teacher sun age on the planets of normal evolution. The spiritual status is much in advance of such a mortal dispensation. 7. The fifth mansion world. Transport to the fifth mansion world represents a tremendous forward step in the life of a Urantia progressor. The experience on this world is a real foretaste of Jerusalem life. Here you begin to realize the high destiny of the loyal evolutionary worlds, since they may normally progress to this stage during their natural planetary development. The culture of this mansion world corresponds in general to that of the early era of light and life on the planets of normal evolutionary progress. And from this, you can understand why it is so arranged that the highly cultured and progressive types of beings who sometimes inhabit these advanced evolutionary worlds are exempt from passing through one or more or even all of the mansion spheres. Having mastered the local universe language before leaving the fourth mansion world, you now devote more time to the perfection of the tongue of Uversa, to the end that you may be proficient in both languages before arriving on Jerusalem with residential status. All ascending mortals are bilingual from the system headquarters up to Havona, and then it is only necessary to enlarge the super-universe vocabulary, still additional enlargement being required for residence on Paradise. Upon arrival on Mansonia number 5, the pilgrim is given permission to visit the transition world of corresponding number, the sun's headquarters. Here the ascendant mortal becomes personally familiar with the various groups of divine sonship. He has heard of these superb beings and has already met them on Jerusalem, but now he comes really to know them. On the 5th Mansonia, you begin to learn of the constellation study worlds. Here you meet the first of the instructors who begin to prepare you for the subsequent constellation sojourn. More of this preparation continues on worlds 6 and 7, while the finishing touches are supplied in the sector of the ascending mortals on Jerusalem. A real birth of cosmic consciousness takes place on Mansonia number 5. You are becoming universe-minded. This is indeed a time of expanding horizons. It is beginning to dawn upon the enlarging minds of the ascending mortals that some stupendous and magnificent, some supernal and divine destiny awaits all who complete the progressive paradise ascension, which has been so laboriously but so joyfully and auspiciously begun. At about this point, the average mortal ascender begins to manifest bona fide experiential enthusiasm for the Havona ascent. Study is becoming voluntary, unselfish service natural, and worship spontaneous. A real Urantia character is budding. A real Urantia creature is evolving. 8. The 6th Mansion World. Sojourners on this sphere are permitted to visit Transition World number 6, where they learn more about the high spirits of the super-universe, although they are not able to visualize many of these celestial beings. Here they also receive their first lessons in the prospective spirit career, which so immediately follows graduation from the Urantia training of the local universe. The Assistant System Sovereign makes frequent visits to this world, and the initial instruction is here begun in the technique of universe administration. The first lessons embracing the affairs of a whole universe are now imparted. This is a brilliant age for ascending mortals and usually witnesses the perfect fusion of the human mind and the divine adjuster. In potential, this fusion may have occurred previously, but the actual working identity many times is not achieved until the time of the sojourn on the 5th Mansion World, or even the 6th. The union of the evolving immortal soul with the eternal and divine adjuster is signalized by the seraphic summoning of the supervising superangel for resurrected survivors and of the archangel of record for those going to judgment on the 3rd day. And then, in the presence of such a survivor's Urantia associates, these messengers of confirmation speak. This is a beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. This simple ceremony marks the entrance of an ascending mortal upon the eternal career of paradise service. Immediately upon the confirmation of adjuster fusion, the new Urantia being is introduced to his fellows for the first time by his new name, and is granted the 40 days of spiritual retirement from all routine activities wherein to commune with himself and to choose some one of the optional routes to Havona, and to select from the differential techniques of paradise attainment. But still are these brilliant beings more or less material. They are far from being true spirits. They are more like supermortals, spiritually speaking, still a little lower than the angels. But they are truly becoming marvelous creatures. During the sojourn on world number 6, the Mansion World students achieve a status which is comparable with the exalted development characterizing those evolutionary worlds which have normally progressed beyond the initial stage of light and life. The organization of society on this Mansonia is of a high order. The shadow of the mortal nature grows less and less as these worlds are ascended one by one. You are becoming more and more adorable as you leave behind the coarse vestiges of planetary animal origin. Coming up through great tribulation serves to make glorified mortals very kind and understanding, very sympathetic and tolerant. 9. The seventh mansion world. The experience on this sphere is the crowning achievement of the immediate post-mortal career. During your sojourn here, you will receive the instruction of many teachers, all of whom will cooperate in the task of preparing you for residence on Jerusalem. Any discernible differences between those mortals hailing from the isolated and retarded worlds and those survivors from the more advanced and enlightened spheres are virtually obliterated during the sojourn on the seventh mansion world. Here you will be purged of all the remnants of unfortunate heredity, unwholesome environment, and unspiritual planetary tendencies. The last remnants of the mark of the beast are here eradicated. While sojourning on Mansonia number 7, permission is granted to visit Transition World number 7, the world of the Universal Father. Here you begin a new and more spiritual worship of the unseen Father, a habit you will increasingly pursue all the way up through your long ascending career. You find the Father's temple on this world of transitional culture, but you do not see the Father. Now begins the formation of classes for graduation to Jerusalem. You have gone from world to world as individuals, but now you prepare to depart for Jerusalem in groups, although within certain limits an ascender may elect to tarry on the seventh mansion world for the purpose of enabling a tardy member of his earthly or Mansonia working group to catch up with him. The personnel of the seventh Mansonia assemble on the Sea of Glass to witness your departure for Jerusalem with residential status. Hundreds or thousands of times you may have visited Jerusalem, but always as a guest. Never before have you proceeded toward the system capital in the company of a group of your fellows who were bidding an eternal farewell to the whole Mansonia career as ascending mortals. You will soon be welcomed on the receiving field of the headquarters world as Jerusalem citizens. You will greatly enjoy your progress through the 7 dematerializing worlds. They are really demortalizing spheres. You are mostly human on the first mansion world, just a mortal being minus a material body, a human mind housed in a Urantia form, a material body of the Urantia world, but not a mortal house of flesh and blood. You really pass from the mortal state to the immortal status at the time of adjuster fusion, and by the time you have finished the Jerusalem career, you will be full-fledged Urantians. 10. Jerusalem citizenship. The reception of a new class of Mansion World graduates is the signal for all Jerusalem to assemble as a committee of welcome. Even the Spornagia enjoy the arrival of these triumphant ascenders of evolutionary origin, those who have run the planetary race and finished the Mansion World progression. Only the physical controllers and Urantia power supervisors are absent from these occasions of rejoicing. John the Revelator saw a vision of the arrival of a class of advancing mortals from the seventh mansion world to their first heaven, the glories of Jerusalem. He recorded, "And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had gained the victory over the beast that was originally in them, and over the image that persisted through the mansion worlds, and finally over the last mark and trace, standing on the sea of glass, having the harps of God, and singing the song of deliverance from mortal fear and death." Perfected space communication is to be had on all these worlds, and your anywhere reception of such communication is made possible by carrying the harp of God, a Urantia contrivance compensating for the inability to directly adjust the immature Urantia sensory mechanism to the reception of space communications. Paul also had a view of the ascendant citizen core of perfecting mortals on Jerusalem, for he wrote, "But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the grand assembly of Michael, and to the spirits of just men being made perfect." After mortals have attained residence on the system headquarters, no more literal resurrections will be experienced. The Urantia form granted you on departure from the mansion world career is such as will see you through to the end of the local universe experience. Changes will be made from time to time, but you will retain this same form until you bid it farewell when you emerge as first-stage spirits preparatory for transit to the super-universe worlds of ascending culture and spirit training. 7 times do those mortals who pass through the entire Mansonia career experience the adjustment sleep and the resurrection awakening. But the last resurrection hall, the final awakening chamber, was left behind on the 7th mansion world. No more will a form change necessitate the lapse of consciousness or a break in the continuity of personal memory. The mortal personality initiated on the evolutionary worlds and tabernacled in the flesh, indwelt by the mystery monitors and invested by the Spirit of Truth, is not fully mobilized, realized, and unified until that day when such a Jerusalem citizen is given clearance for Urantia and proclaimed a true member of the Urantia Corps of Nebadon, an immortal survivor of a juster association, a paradise ascender, a personality of Urantia status, and a true child of the Most Highs. Mortal death is a technique of escape from the material life in the flesh, and the Mansonia experience of progressive life through 7 worlds of corrective training and cultural education represents the introduction of mortal survivors to the Urantia career, the transition life which intervenes between the evolutionary material existence and the higher spirit attainment of the ascenders of time, who are destined to achieve the portals of eternity.
Sponsored by A Brilliant Evening Star.
Paper 48. The Urantia Life. The gods cannot, at least they do not, transform a creature of gross animal nature into a perfected spirit by some mysterious act of creative magic. When the creators desire to produce perfect beings, they do so by direct and original creation, but they never undertake to convert animal origin and material creatures into beings of perfection in a single step. The Urantia life, extending as it does over the various stages of the local universe career, is the only possible approach whereby material mortals could attain the threshold of the spirit world. What magic could death, the natural dissolution of the material body, hold, that such a simple step should instantly transform the mortal and material mind into an immortal and perfected spirit? Such beliefs are but ignorant superstitions and pleasing fables. Always this Urantia transition intervenes between the mortal estate and the subsequent spirit status of surviving human beings. This intermediate state of universe progress differs markedly in the various local creations, but in intent and purpose they are all quite similar. The arrangement of the mansion and higher Urantia worlds in Nebadon is fairly typical of the Urantia transition regimes in this part of Orvonton. 1. Urantia materials. The Urantia realms are the local universe liaison spheres between the material and spiritual levels of creature existence. This Urantia life has been known on Urantia since the early days of the planetary prince. From time to time, this transition state has been taught to mortals, and the concept, in distorted form, has found a place in present-day religions. The Urantia spheres are the transition phases of mortal ascension, through the progression worlds of the local universe. Only the 7 worlds surrounding the finaliter sphere of the local systems are called mansion worlds, but all 56 of the system transition abodes, in common with the higher spheres around the constellations in the universe headquarters, are called Morontia worlds. These creations partake of the physical beauty and the Morontia grandeur of the local universe headquarters spheres. All of these worlds are architectural spheres, and they have just double the number of elements of the evolved planets. Such made-to-order worlds not only abound in the heavy metals and crystals, having 100 physical elements, but likewise have exactly 100 forms of a unique energy organization called Morontia material. The master physical controllers and the Morontia power supervisors are able so to modify the revolutions of the primary units of matter, and at the same time so to transform these associations of energy as to create this new substance. The early Morontia life in the local systems is very much like that of your present material world, becoming less physical and more truly Morontial on the constellation study worlds. And as you advance to the Salvington spheres, you increasingly attain spiritual levels. The Morontia power supervisors are able to effect a union of material and of spiritual energies, thereby organizing a Morontia form of materialization, which is receptive to the superimposition of a controlling spirit. When you traverse the Morontia life of Nebadon, these same patient and skillful Morontia power supervisors will successively provide you with 570 Morontia bodies, each one a phase of your progressive transformation. From the time of leaving the material worlds until you are constituted a first-stage spirit on Salvington, you will undergo just 570 separate and ascending Morontia changes. 8 of these occur in the system, 71 in the constellation, and 491 during the sojourn on the spheres of Salvington. In the days of the mortal flesh, the divine spirit indwells you almost as a thing apart, in reality an invasion of man by the bestowed spirit of the Universal Father. But in the Morontia life, the spirit will become a real part of your personality, and as you successively pass through the 570 progressive transformations, you ascend from the material to the spiritual estate of creature life. Paul learned of the existence of the Morontia worlds and of the reality of Morontia materials, for he wrote, "They have in heaven a better and more enduring substance." And these Morontia materials are real, literal, even as in the city which has foundations whose builder and maker is God. And each of these marvelous spheres is a better country, that is, a heavenly one. 2. Morontia power supervisors. These unique beings are exclusively concerned with the supervision of those activities which represent a working combination of spiritual and physical or semi-material energies. They are exclusively devoted to the ministry of Morontia progression. Not that they so much minister to mortals during the transition experience, but they rather make possible the transition environment for the progressing Morontia creatures. They are the channels of Morontia power which sustain and energize the Morontia phases of the transition worlds. Morontia power supervisors are the offspring of a local universe mother spirit. They are fairly standard in design, though differing slightly in nature in the various local creations. They are created for their specific function and require no training before entering upon their responsibilities. The creation of the first Morontia power supervisors is simultaneous with the arrival of the first mortal survivor on the shores of some one of the first mansion worlds in a local universe. They are created in groups of 1,000, classified as follows: 1. Circuit regulators, 400. 2. System coordinators, 200. 3. Planetary custodians, 100. 4. Combined controllers, 100. 5. Liaison stabilizers, 100. 6. Selective assorters, 50. 7. Associate registrars, 50. The power supervisors always serve in their native universe, They are directed exclusively by the joint spirit activity of the Universe Sun and the Universe Spirit, but are otherwise a wholly self-governing group. They maintain headquarters on each of the first mansion worlds of the local systems, where they work in close association with both the physical controllers and the seraphim, but function in a world of their own as regards energy manifestation and spirit application. They also sometimes work in connection with supermaterial phenomena on the evolutionary worlds as ministers of temporary assignment, but they rarely serve on the inhabited planets. Neither do they work on the higher training worlds of the super-universe, being chiefly devoted to the transition regime of Urantia progression in a local universe. 1. Circuit regulators. These are the unique beings who coordinate physical and spiritual energy and regulate its flow into the segregated channels of the Urantia spheres, and these circuits are exclusively planetary, limited to a single world. The Urantia circuits are distinct from and supplementary to both physical and spiritual circuits on the transition worlds, and it requires millions of these regulators to energize even a system of mansion worlds like that of Satania. Circuit regulators initiate those changes in material energies which render them subject to the control and regulation of their associates. These beings are Urantia power generators as well as circuit regulators. Much as a dynamo apparently generates electricity out of the atmosphere, so do these living Urantia dynamos seem to transform the everywhere energies of space into those materials which the Urantia supervisors weave into the bodies and life activities of the ascending mortals. 2. System coordinators. Since each Urantia world has a separate order of Urantia energy, it is exceedingly difficult for humans to visualize these spheres. But on each successive transition sphere, mortals will find the plant life and everything else pertaining to the Urantia existence progressively modified to correspond with the advancing spiritization of the ascending survivor. And since the energy system of each world is thus individualized, these coordinators operate to harmonize and blend such differing power systems into a working unit for the associated spheres of any particular group. Ascending mortals gradually progress from the physical to the spiritual as they advance from one Urantia world to another. Hence the necessity for providing an ascending scale of Urantia spheres and an ascending scale of Urantia forms. When mansion world ascenders pass from one sphere to another, they are delivered by the transport seraphim to the receivers of the system coordinators on the advanced world. Here in those unique temples, at the center of the 70 radiating wings, wherein are the chambers of transition, similar to the resurrection halls on the initial world of reception for Earth origin mortals, the necessary changes in creature form are skillfully effected by the system coordinators. These early Urantia form changes require about 7 days of standard time for their accomplishment. 3. Planetary custodians. Each Urantia world, from the mansion spheres up to the universe headquarters, is in the custody, as regards Urantia affairs, of 70 guardians. They constitute the local planetary Council of Supreme Urantia Authority. This council grants material for Urantia forms to all ascending creatures who land on the spheres, and authorizes those changes in creature form which make it possible for an ascender to proceed to the succeeding sphere. After the mansion worlds have been traversed, you will translate from one phase of Urantia life to another without having to surrender consciousness. Unconsciousness attends only the earlier metamorphoses and the later transitions from one universe to another and from Havona to Paradise. 4. Combined controllers. One of these highly mechanical beings is always stationed at the center of each administrative unit of a Urantia world. A combined controller is sensitive to and functional with physical, spiritual, and Urantial energies. And with this being there are always associated 2 system coordinators, 4 circuit regulators, 1 planetary custodian, 1 liaison stabilizer, and either an associate registrar or a selective assorter. 5. Liaison stabilizers. These are the regulators of the Urantia energy in association with the physical and spirit forces of the realm. They make possible the conversion of Morontia energy into Morontia material. The whole Morontia organization of existence is dependent on the stabilizers. They slow down the energy revolutions to that point where physicalization can occur. But I have no terms with which I can compare or illustrate the ministry of such beings. It is quite beyond human imagination. 6. Selective assorters. As you progress from one class or phase of a Morontia world to another, you must be rekeyed or advance-tuned, and it is the task of the selective assorters to keep you in progressive synchrony with the Morontia life. While the basic Morontia forms of life and matter are identical from the first mansion world to the last universe transition sphere, there is a functional progression which gradually extends from the material to the spiritual. Your adaptation to this basically uniform but successively advancing and spiritizing creation is effected by this selective rekeying. Such an adjustment in the mechanism of personality is tantamount to a new creation, notwithstanding that you retain the same Morontia form. You may repeatedly subject yourself to the test of these examiners, and as soon as you register adequate spiritual achievement, they will gladly certify you for advanced standing. These progressive changes result in altered reactions to the Morontia environment, such as modifications in food requirements and numerous other personal practices. The selective assorters are also of great service in the grouping of Morontia personalities for purposes of study, teaching, and other projects. They naturally indicate those who will best function in temporary association. 7. Associate registrars. The Morontia world has its own recorders, who serve in association with the spirit recorders in the supervision and custody of the records and other data indigenous to the Morontia creations. The Morontia records are available to all orders of personalities. All Morontia transition realms are accessible alike to material and spirit beings. As Morontia progressors, you will remain in full contact with the material world and with material personalities, while you will increasingly discern and fraternize with spirit beings. And by the time of departure from the Morontia regime, you will have seen all orders of spirits with the exception of a few of the higher types, such as solitary messengers. 3. Morontia companions. These hosts of the mansion and Morontia worlds are the offspring of a local universe mother spirit. They are created from age to age in groups of 100,000, and in Nebadon there are at present over 70 billion of these unique beings. Morontia companions are trained for service by the Melchizedeks on a special planet near Salvington. They do not pass through the central Melchizedek schools. In service, they range from the lowest mansion worlds of the systems to the highest study spheres of Salvington, but they are seldom encountered on the inhabited worlds. They serve under the general supervision of the sons of God and under the immediate direction of the Melchizedeks. The Morontia companions maintain 10,000 headquarters in a local universe, on each of the first mansion worlds of the local systems. They are almost wholly a self-governing order and are in general an intelligent and loyal group of beings. But every now and then, in connection with certain unfortunate celestial upheavals, they have been known to go astray. Thousands of these useful creatures were lost during the times of the Lucifer Rebellion in Satania. Your local system now has its full quota of these beings, the loss of the Lucifer Rebellion having only recently been made up. There are two distinct types of Morontia companions. One type is aggressive, the other retiring, but otherwise they are equal in status. They are not sex creatures, but they manifest a touchingly beautiful affection for one another. And while they are hardly compatible,
Paper 49. The Inhabited Worlds. All mortal inhabited worlds are evolutionary in origin and nature. These spheres are the spawning ground, the evolutionary cradle of the mortal races of time and space. Each unit of the ascendant life is a veritable training school for the stage of existence just ahead, and this is true of every stage of man's progressive paradise ascent. Just as true of the initial mortal experience on an evolutionary planet as of the final universe headquarters school of the Melchizedeks, a school which is not attended by ascending mortals until just before their translation to the regime of the superuniverse and the attainment of first-stage spirit existence. All inhabited worlds are basically grouped for celestial administration into the local systems, and each of these local systems is limited to about 1,000 evolutionary worlds. This limitation is by the decree of the Ancients of Days, and it pertains to actual evolutionary planets whereon mortals of survival status are living. Neither worlds finally settled in light and life, nor planets in the pre-human stage of life development are reckoned in this group. Satania itself is an unfinished system containing only 619 inhabited worlds. Such planets are numbered serially in accordance with their registration as inhabited worlds, as worlds inhabited by will creatures. Thus was Urantia given the number 606 of Satania, meaning the 606th world in this local system on which the long evolutionary life process culminated in the appearance of human beings. There are 36 uninhabited planets nearing the life endowment stage, and several are now being made ready for the life carriers. There are nearly 200 spheres which are evolving so as to be ready for life implantation within the next few million years. Not all planets are suited to harbor mortal life. Small ones having a high rate of axial revolution are wholly unsuited for life habitats. In several of the physical systems of Satania, the planets revolving around the central sun are too large for habitation, their great mass occasioning oppressive gravity. Many of these enormous spheres have satellites, sometimes a half-dozen or more, and these moons are often in size very near that of Urantia, so that they are almost ideal for habitation. The oldest inhabited world of Satania, world number 1, is Anova, one of the 44 satellites revolving around an enormous dark planet, but exposed to the differential light of 3 neighboring suns. Anova is in an advanced stage of progressive civilization. 1. The planetary life. The universes of time and space are gradual in development. The progression of life, terrestrial or celestial, is neither arbitrary nor magical. Cosmic evolution may not always be understandable, predictable, but it is strictly non-accidental. The biologic unit of material life is the protoplasmic cell, the communal association of chemical, electrical, and other basic energies. The chemical formulas differ in each system, and the technique of living cell reproduction is slightly different in each local universe, but the life carriers are always the living catalyzers who initiate the primordial reactions of material life. They are the instigators of the energy circuits of living matter. All the worlds of a local system disclose unmistakable physical kinship. Nevertheless, each planet has its own scale of life, no 2 worlds being exactly alike in plant and animal endowment. These planetary variations in the system life types result from the decisions of the life carriers. But these beings are neither capricious nor whimsical. The universes are conducted in accordance with law and order. The laws of Nebadon are the divine mandates of Salvington, and the evolutionary order of life in Satania is in consonance with the evolutionary pattern of Nebadon. Evolution is the rule of human development, but the process itself varies greatly on different worlds. Life is sometimes initiated in one center, sometimes in three, as it was on Urantia. On the atmospheric worlds, it usually has a marine origin, but not always. Much depends on the physical status of a planet. The life carriers have great latitude in their function of life initiation. In the development of planetary life, the vegetable form always precedes the animal and is quite fully developed before the animal patterns differentiate. All animal types are developed from the basic patterns of the preceding vegetable kingdom of living things. They are not separately organized. The early stages of life evolution are not altogether in conformity with your present-day views. Mortal man is not an evolutionary accident. There is a precise system, a universal law, which determines the unfolding of the planetary life plan on the spheres of space. Time and the production of large numbers of a species are not the controlling influences. Mice reproduce much more rapidly than elephants, yet elephants evolve more rapidly than mice. The process of planetary evolution is orderly and controlled. The development of higher organisms from lower groupings of life is not accidental. Sometimes evolutionary progress is temporarily delayed by the destruction of certain favorable lines of life plasm carried in a selected species. It often requires ages upon ages to recoup the damage occasioned by the loss of a single superior strain of human heredity. These selected and superior strains of living protoplasm should be jealously and intelligently guarded when once they make their appearance. And on most of the inhabited worlds, these superior potentials of life are valued much more highly than on Urantia. 2. Planetary physical types. There is a standard and basic pattern of vegetable and animal life in each system. But the life carriers are oftentimes confronted with the necessity of modifying these basic patterns to conform to the varying physical conditions which confront them on numerous worlds of space. They foster a generalized system type of mortal creature, but there are 7 distinct physical types, as well as thousands upon thousands of minor variants of these 7 outstanding differentiations. 1. Atmospheric types. 2. Elemental types. 3. Gravity types. 4. Temperature types. 5. Electric types. 6. Energizing types. 7. Unnamed types. The Satania system contains all of these types and numerous intermediate groups, although some are very sparingly represented. 1. The atmospheric types. The physical differences of the worlds of mortal habitation are chiefly determined by the nature of the atmosphere. Other influences which contribute to the planetary differentiation of life are relatively minor. The present atmospheric status of Urantia is almost ideal for the support of the breathing type of man, but the human type can be so modified that it can live on both the superatmospheric and the subatmospheric planets. Such modifications also extend to the animal life, which differs greatly on the various inhabited spheres. There is a very great modification of animal orders on both the sub- and the superatmospheric worlds. Of the atmospheric types in Satania, about 2.5% are sub-breathers, about 5% super-breathers, and over 91% are mid-breathers, altogether accounting for 98.5% of the Satania worlds. Beings such as the Urantia races are classified as mid-breathers. You represent the average or typical breathing order of mortal existence. If intelligent creatures should exist on a planet with an atmosphere similar to that of your near neighbor, Venus, they would belong to the super-breather group, while those inhabiting a planet with an atmosphere as thin as that of your outer neighbor, Mars, would be denominated sub-breathers. If mortals should inhabit a planet devoid of air, like your moon, they would belong to the separate order of non-breathers. This type represents a radical or extreme adjustment to the planetary environment and is separately considered. Non-breathers account for the remaining 1.5% of Satania worlds. 2. The elemental types. These differentiations have to do with the relation of mortals to water, air, and land, and there are 4 distinct species of intelligent life as they are related to these habitats. The Urantia races are of the land order. It is quite impossible for you to envisage the environment which prevails during the early ages of some worlds. These unusual conditions make it necessary for the evolving animal life to remain in its marine nursery habitat for longer periods than on those planets which very early provide a hospitable land and atmosphere environment. Conversely, on some worlds of the super-breathers, when the planet is not too large, it is sometimes expedient to provide for a mortal type which can readily negotiate atmospheric passage. These air navigators sometimes intervene between the water and land groups, and they always live in a measure upon the ground, eventually evolving into land dwellers. But on some worlds, for ages they continue to fly even after they have become land-type beings. It is both amazing and amusing to observe the early civilization of a primitive race of human beings taking shape, in one case in the air and treetops, and, in another, midst the shallow waters of sheltered tropic basins, as well as on the bottom, sides, and shores of these marine gardens of the dawn races of such extraordinary spheres. Even on Urantia, there was a long age during which primitive man preserved himself and advanced his primitive civilization by living for the most part in the treetops, as did his earlier arboreal ancestors. And on Urantia, you still have a group of diminutive mammals, the bat family, that are air navigators, and your seals and whales of marine habitat are also of the mammalian order. In Satania, of the elemental types, 7% are water, 10% air, 70% land, and 13% combined land and air types. But these modifications of early intelligent creatures are neither human fishes nor human birds. They are of the human and pre-human types, neither superfishes nor glorified birds, but distinctly mortal. 3. The gravity types. By modification of creative design, intelligent beings are so constructed that they can freely function on spheres both smaller and larger than Urantia, thus being, in measure, accommodated to the gravity of those planets which are not of ideal size and density. The various planetary types of mortals vary in height, the average in Nebadon being a trifle under 7 feet. Some of the larger worlds are peopled with beings who are only about 2.5 feet in height. Mortal stature ranges from here on up through the average heights on the average-sized planets to around 10 feet on the smaller inhabited spheres. In Satania, there is only one race under 4 feet in height. 20% of the Satania-inhabited worlds are peopled with mortals of the modified gravity types occupying the larger and the smaller planets. 4. The temperature types. It is possible to create living beings who can withstand temperatures both much higher and much lower than the life range of the Urantia races. There are 5 distinct orders of beings as they are classified with reference to heat-regulating mechanisms. In this scale, the Urantia races are number 3. 30% of Satania worlds are peopled with races of modified temperature types. 12% belong to the higher temperature ranges, 18% to the lower, as compared with Urantians who function in the mid-temperature group. 5. The electric types. The electric, magnetic, and electronic behavior of the worlds varies greatly. There are 10 designs of mortal life variously fashioned to withstand the differential energy of the spheres. These 10 varieties also react in slightly different ways to the chemical rays of ordinary sunlight. But these slight physical variations in no way affect the intellectual or the spiritual life. Of the electric groupings of mortal life, almost 23% belong to class number 4, the Urantia type of existence. These types are distributed as follows: number 1, 1%, number 2, 2%, number 3, 5%, number 4, 23%, number 5, 27%, number 6, 24%, number 7, 8%, number 8, 5%, number 9, 3%, number 10, 2%, in whole percentages. 6. The energizing types. Not all worlds are alike in the manner of taking in energy. Not all inhabited worlds have an atmospheric ocean suited to respiratory exchange of gases, such as is present on Urantia. During the earlier and the later stages of many planets, beings of your present order could not exist. And when the respiratory factors of a planet are very high or very low, but when all other prerequisites to intelligent life are adequate, the life carriers often establish on such worlds a modified form of mortal existence, beings who are competent to effect their life process exchanges directly by means of light energy and the first-hand power transmutations of the master physical controllers. There are 6 differing types of animal and mortal nutrition. The sub-breathers employ the first type of nutrition, the marine dwellers the second, the mid-breathers the third, as on Urantia. The super-breathers employ the 4th type of energy intake, while the non-breathers utilize the 5th order of nutrition and energy. The 6th technique of energizing is limited to the midway creatures. 7. The unnamed types. There are numerous additional physical variations in planetary life, but all of these differences are wholly matters of anatomical modification, physiologic differentiation, and electrochemical adjustment. Such distinctions do not concern the intellectual or the spiritual life. 3. Worlds of the non-breathers. The majority of inhabited planets are peopled with the breathing type of intelligent beings. But there are also orders of mortals who are able to live on worlds with little or no air. Of the Orvantan inhabited worlds, this type amounts to less than 7%. In Nebudan, this percentage is less than 3. In all Satania, there are only 9 such worlds. There are so very few of the non-breather type of inhabited worlds in Satania because this more recently organized section of Nolashidek still abounds in meteoric space bodies, and worlds without a protective friction atmosphere are subject to incessant bombardment by these wanderers. Even some of the comets consist of meteor swarms, but as a rule they are disrupted smaller bodies of matter. Millions upon millions of meteorites enter the atmosphere of Urantia daily, coming in at the rate of almost 200 miles a second. On the non-breathing worlds, the advanced races must do much to protect themselves from meteor damage by making electrical installations which operate to consume or shunt the meteors. Great danger confronts them when they venture beyond these protected zones. These worlds are also subject to disastrous electrical storms of a nature unknown on Urantia. During such times of tremendous energy fluctuation, the inhabitants must take refuge in their special structures of protective insulation. Life on the worlds of the non-breathers is radically different from what it is on Urantia. The non-breathers do not eat food or drink water, as do the Urantia races. The reactions of the nervous system, the heat-regulating mechanism, and the metabolism of these specialized peoples are radically different from such functions of Urantia mortals. Almost every act of living, aside from reproduction, differs, and even the methods of procreation are somewhat different. On the non-breathing worlds, the animal species are radically unlike those found on the atmospheric planets. The non-breathing plan of life varies from the technique of existence on an atmospheric world. Even in survival, their peoples differ, being candidates for spirit fusion. Nevertheless, these beings enjoy life and carry forward the activities of the realm with the same relative trials and joys that are experienced by the mortals living on atmospheric worlds. In mind and character, the non-breathers do not differ from other mortal types. You would be more than interested in the planetary conduct of this type of mortal, because such a race of beings inhabits a sphere in close proximity to Urantia. 4. Evolutionary will creatures. There are great differences between the mortals of the different worlds, even among those belonging to the same intellectual and physical types. But all mortals of will dignity are erect animals, bipeds. There are 6 basic evolutionary races, 3 primary, red, yellow, and blue, and 3 secondary, orange, green, and indigo. Most inhabited worlds have all of these races, but many of the 3-brained planets harbor only the 3 primary types. Some local systems also have only these 3 races. The average special physical sense endowment of human beings is 12, though the special senses of the 3-brained mortals are extended slightly beyond those of the 1- and 2-brained types. They can see and hear considerably more than the Urantia races. Young are usually born singly, multiple births being the exception, and the family life is fairly uniform on all types of planets. Sex equality prevails on all advanced worlds. Male and female are equal in mind endowment and spiritual status. We do not regard a planet as having emerged from barbarism so long as one sex seeks to tyrannize over the other. This feature of creature experience is always greatly improved after the arrival of a material son and daughter. Seasons and temperature variations occur on all sun-lighted and sun-heated planets. Agriculture is universal on all atmospheric worlds. Tilling the soil is the one pursuit that is common to the advancing races of all such planets. Mortals all have the same general struggles with microscopic foes in their early days, such as you now experience on Urantia, though perhaps not so extensive. The length of life varies on the different planets, from 25 years on the primitive worlds to near 500 on the more advanced and older spheres. Human beings are all gregarious, both tribal and racial. These group segregations are inherent in their origin and constitution. Such tendencies can be modified only by advancing civilization and by gradual spiritualization. The social, economic, and governmental problems of the inhabited worlds vary in accordance with the age of the planets and the degree to which they have been influenced by the successive sojourns of the divine sons. Mind is the bestowal of the infinite spirit, and functions quite the same in diverse environments. The mind of mortals is akin, regardless of certain structural and chemical differences which characterize the physical natures of the will creatures of the local systems. Regardless of personal or physical planetary differences, the mental life of all these various orders of mortals is very similar, and their immediate careers after death are very much alike. But mortal mind without immortal spirit cannot survive. The mind of man is mortal. Only the bestowed spirit is immortal. Survival is dependent on spiritualization by the ministry of the adjuster, on the birth and evolution of the immortal soul. At least, there must not have developed an antagonism towards the adjuster's mission of effecting the spiritual transformation of the material mind. 5. The planetary series of mortals. It will be somewhat difficult to make an adequate portrayal of the planetary series of mortals because you know so little about them, and because there are so many variations. Mortal creatures may, however, be studied from numerous viewpoints, among which are the following. 1. Adjustment to planetary environment. 2. Brain type series. 3. Spirit reception series. 4. Planetary mortal epochs. 5. Creature kinship serials. 6. Adjuster fusion series. 7. Techniques of terrestrial escape. The inhabited spheres of the 7 super-universes are peopled with mortals who simultaneously classify in some one or more categories of each of these 7 generalized classes of evolutionary creature life. But even these general classifications make no provision for such beings as Midsonites, nor for certain other forms of intelligent life. The inhabited worlds, as they have been presented in these narratives, are peopled with evolutionary mortal creatures, but there are other life forms. 1. Adjustment to planetary environment. There are 3 general groups of inhabited worlds from the standpoint of the adjustment of creature life to the planetary environment: the normal adjustment group, the radical adjustment group, and the experimental group. Normal adjustments to planetary conditions follow the general physical patterns previously considered. The worlds of the non-breathers typify the radical or extreme adjustment, but other types are also included in this group. Experimental worlds are usually ideally adapted to the typical life forms, and on these decimal planets, the life carriers attempt to produce beneficial variations in the standard life designs. Since your world is an experimental planet, it differs markedly from its sister spheres in Satania. Many forms of life have appeared on Urantia that are not found elsewhere. Likewise, are many common species absent from your planet. In the universe of Nebadon, all the life modification worlds are serially linked together and constitute a special domain of universe affairs which is given attention by designated administrators. And all of these experimental worlds are periodically inspected by a corps of universe directors whose chief is the veteran finaliter known in Satania as Tabermansha. 2. Brain type series. The one physical uniformity of mortals is the brain and nervous system. Nevertheless, there are 3 basic organizations of the brain mechanism: the 1, the 2, and the 3-brained types. Urantians are of the 2-brained type, somewhat more imaginative, adventurous, and philosophical than the 1-brained mortals, but somewhat less spiritual, ethical, and worshipful than the 3-brained orders. These brain differences characterize even the pre-human animal existences. From the 2-hemisphere type of the Urantian cerebral cortex, you can, by analogy, grasp something of the 1-brained type. The 3rd brain of the 3-brained orders is best conceived as an evolvement of your lower or rudimentary form of brain, which is developed to the point where it functions chiefly in control of physical activities, leaving the 2 superior brains free for higher engagements, one for intellectual functions and the other for the spiritual counterparting activities of the thought adjuster. While the terrestrial attainments of the 1-brained races are slightly limited in comparison with the 2-brained orders, the older planets of the 3-brained group exhibit civilizations that would astound Urantians, and which would somewhat shame yours by comparison. In mechanical development and material civilization, even in intellectual progress, the 2-brained mortal worlds are able to equal the 3-brained spheres. But in the higher control of mind and development of intellectual and spiritual reciprocation, you are somewhat inferior. All such comparative estimates concerning the intellectual progress or the spiritual attainments of any world or group of worlds should in fairness recognize planetary age. Much, very much, depends on age, the help of the biologic uplifters, and the subsequent missions of the various orders of the divine sons. While the three-brained peoples are capable of a slightly higher planetary evolution than either the one- or two-brained orders, all have the same type of life plasm, and carry on planetary activities in very similar ways, much as do human beings on Urantia. These three types of mortals are distributed throughout the worlds of the local systems. In the majority of cases, planetary conditions had very little to do with the decisions of the life carriers to project these varied orders of mortals on the different worlds. It is a prerogative of the life carriers thus to plan and execute. These three orders stand on an equal footing in the ascension career. Each must traverse the same intellectual scale of development, and each must master the same spiritual tests of progression. The system administration and the constellation over-control of these different worlds are uniformly free from discrimination. Even the regimes of the planetary princes are identical. 3. Spirit Reception Series. There are three groups of mind design as related to contact with spirit affairs. This classification does not refer to the one-, two-, and three-brained orders of mortals. It refers primarily to gland chemistry, more particularly to the organization of certain glands comparable to the pituitary bodies. The races on some worlds have one gland, on others two, as do Urantians, while on still other spheres the races have three of these unique bodies. The inherent imagination and spiritual receptivity is definitely influenced by this differential chemical endowment. Of the spirit reception types, 65% are of the second group, like the Urantia races. 12% are of the first type, naturally less receptive, while 23% are more spiritually inclined during terrestrial life. But such distinctions do not survive natural death. All of these racial differences pertain only to the life in the flesh. 4. Planetary mortal epochs. This classification recognizes the succession of temporal dispensations as they affect man's terrestrial status and his reception of celestial ministry. Life is initiated on the planets by the life carriers, who watch over its development until sometime after the evolutionary appearance of mortal man. Before the life carriers leave a planet, they duly install a planetary prince as ruler of the realm. With this ruler there arrives a full quota of subordinate auxiliaries and ministering helpers, and the first adjudication of the living and the dead is simultaneous with his arrival. With the emergence of human groupings, this planetary prince arrives to inaugurate human civilization and to focalize human society. Your world of confusion is no criterion of the early days of the reign of the planetary princes, for it was near the beginning of such an administration on Urantia that your planetary prince, Caligastia, cast his lot with the rebellion of the system sovereign, Lucifer. Your planet has pursued a stormy course ever since. On a normal evolutionary world, racial progress attains its natural biologic peak during the regime of the planetary prince, and shortly thereafter the system sovereign dispatches a material son and daughter to that planet. These imported beings are of service as biologic uplifters. Their default on Urantia further complicated your planetary history. When the intellectual and ethical progress of a human race has reached the limits of evolutionary development, there comes an avenal son of paradise on a magisterial mission, and later on, when the spiritual status of such a world is nearing its limit of natural attainment, the planet is visited by a paradise bestowal sun. The chief mission of a bestowal sun is to establish the planetary status, release the spirit of truth for planetary function, and thus effect the universal coming of the thought adjusters. Here again, Urantia deviates. There has never been a magisterial mission on your world. Neither was your bestowal sun of the Avenal order. Your planet enjoyed the signal honor of becoming the mortal home planet of the sovereign sun, Michael of Nebadon. As a result of the ministry of all the successive orders of divine sonship, the inhabited worlds and their advancing races begin to approach the apex of planetary evolution. Such worlds now become ripe for the culminating mission, the arrival of the Trinity Teacher Sons. This epoch of the Teacher Sons is the vestibule to the final planetary age, evolutionary utopia, the age of light and life. This classification of human beings will receive particular attention in a succeeding paper. 5. Creature kinship serials. Planets are not only organized vertically into systems, constellations, and so on, but the universe administration also provides for horizontal groupings according to type, series, and other relationships. This lateral administration of the universe pertains more particularly to the coordination of activities of a kindred nature which have been independently fostered on different spheres. These related classes of universe creatures are periodically inspected by certain composite core of high personalities presided over by long-experienced finaliters. These kinship factors are manifest on all levels, for kinship serials exist among non-human personalities as well as among mortal creatures, even between human and superhuman orders. Intelligent beings are vertically related in 12 great groups of 7 major divisions each. The coordination of these uniquely related groups of living beings is probably affected by some not fully comprehended technique of the Supreme Being. 6. Adjuster Fusion Series. The spiritual classification or grouping of all mortals during their pre-fusion experience is wholly determined by the relation of the personality status to the indwelling mystery monitor. Almost 90% of the inhabited worlds of Nebadon are peopled with adjuster fusion mortals, in contrast with a nearby universe where scarcely more than 1/2 of the worlds harbor beings who are adjuster indwelt candidates for eternal fusion. 7. Techniques of terrestrial escape. There is fundamentally only one way in which individual human life can be initiated on the inhabited worlds, and that is through creature procreation and natural birth. But there are numerous techniques whereby man escapes his terrestrial status and gains access to the inward moving stream of paradise ascenders. 6. Terrestrial escape. All of the differing physical types and planetary series of mortals alike enjoy the ministry of thought adjusters, guardian angels, and the various orders of the messenger hosts of the infinite spirit. All alike are liberated from the bonds of flesh by the emancipation of natural death, and all alike go thence to the Urantia worlds of spiritual evolution and mind progress. From time to time, on motion of the planetary authorities or the system rulers, special resurrections of the sleeping survivors are conducted. Such resurrections occur at least every millennium of planetary time, when not all but many of those who sleep in the dust awake. These special resurrections are the occasion for mobilizing special groups of ascenders for specific service in the local universe plan of mortal ascension. There are both practical reasons and sentimental associations connected with these special resurrections. Throughout the earlier ages of an inhabited world, many are called to the mansion spheres at the special and the millennial resurrections, but most survivors are repersonalized at the inauguration of a new dispensation associated with the advent of a divine son of planetary service. 1. Mortals of the dispensational or group order of survival. With the arrival of the first adjuster on an inhabited world, the guardian seraphim also make their appearance. They are indispensable to terrestrial escape. Throughout the life lapse period of the sleeping survivors, the spiritual values and eternal realities of their newly evolved and immortal souls are held as a sacred trust by the personal or by the group guardian seraphim. The group guardians of assignment to the sleeping survivors always function with the judgment suns on their world advents. He shall send his angels, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds. With each seraphim of assignment to the repersonalization of a sleeping mortal, there functions the returned adjuster, the same immortal father fragment that lived in him during the days in the flesh, and thus is identity restored and personality resurrected. During the sleep of their subjects, these waiting adjusters serve on Divinington. They never indwell another mortal mind in this interim. While the older worlds of mortal existence harbor those highly developed and exquisitely spiritual types of human beings who are virtually exempt from the Urantia life, the earlier ages of the animal origin races are characterized by primitive mortals who are so immature that fusion with their adjusters is impossible. The reawakening of these mortals is accomplished by the guardian seraphim in conjunction with an individualized portion of the immortal spirit of the third source and center. Thus are the sleeping survivors of a planetary age repersonalized in the dispensational roll calls. But with regard to the non-salvable personalities of a realm, no immortal spirit is present to function with the group guardians of destiny, and this constitutes cessation of creature existence. While some of your records have pictured these events as taking place on the planets of mortal death, they all really occur on the mansion worlds. 2. Mortals of the individual orders of ascension. The individual progress of human beings is measured by their successive attainment and traversal, mastery, of the 7 cosmic circles. These circles of mortal progression are levels of associated intellectual, social, spiritual, and cosmic insight values. Starting out in the 7th circle, mortals strive for the first, and all who have attained the 3rd immediately have personal guardians of destiny assigned to them. These mortals may be repersonalized in the Urantia life independent of dispensational or other adjudications. Throughout the earlier ages of an evolutionary world, few mortals go to judgment on the 3rd day. But as the ages pass, more and more the personal guardians of destiny are assigned to the advancing mortals, and thus increasing numbers of these evolving creatures are repersonalized on the first mansion world on the 3rd day after natural death. On such occasions, the return of the adjuster signalizes the awakening of the human soul, and this is the repersonalization of the dead just as literally as when the en masse roll is called at the end of a dispensation on the evolutionary worlds. There are 3 groups of individual ascenders. The less advanced land on the initial or first mansion world. The more advanced group may take up the Urantia career on any of the intermediate mansion worlds in accordance with previous planetary progression. The most advanced of these orders really begin their Urantia experience on the 7th mansion world. 3. Mortals of the probationary dependent orders of ascension. The arrival of an adjuster constitutes identity in the eyes of the universe, and all indwelt beings are on the roll calls of justice. But temporal life on the evolutionary worlds is uncertain, and many die in youth before choosing the paradise career. Such adjuster indwelt children and youths follow the parent of most advanced spiritual status, thus going to the system finaliter world, the probationary nursery, on the third day, at a special resurrection, or at the regular millennial and dispensational roll calls. Children who die when too young to have thought adjusters are repersonalized on the finaliter world of the local systems, concomitant with the arrival of either parent on the mansion worlds. A child acquires physical entity at mortal birth, but in the matter of survival, all adjusterless children are reckoned as still attached to their parents. In due course, thought adjusters come to indwell these little ones, while the seraphic ministry to both groups of the probationary dependent orders of survival is in general similar to that of the more advanced parent, or is equivalent to that of the parent in case only one survives. Those attaining the third circle, regardless of the status of their parents, are accorded personal guardians. Similar probation nurseries are maintained on the finaliter spheres of the constellation and the universe headquarters for the adjusterless children of the primary and secondary modified orders of ascenders. 4. Mortals of the secondary modified orders of ascension. These are the progressive human beings of the intermediate evolutionary worlds. As a rule, they are not immune to natural death, but they are exempt from passing through the 7 mansion worlds. The less perfected group reawaken on the headquarters of their local system, passing by only the mansion worlds. The intermediate group go to the constellation training worlds. They pass by the entire Urantia regime of the local system. Still farther on in the planetary ages of spiritual striving, many survivors awaken on the constellation headquarters, and there begin the paradise ascent. But before any of these groups may go forward, they must journey back as instructors to the worlds they missed, gaining many experiences as teachers in those realms which they passed by as students. They all subsequently proceed to paradise by the ordained routes of mortal progression. 5. Mortals of the primary modified order of ascension. These mortals belong to the adjuster-fused type of evolutionary life, but they are most often representative of the final phases of human development on an evolving world. These glorified beings are exempt from passing through the portals of death. They are submitted to sun seizure. They are translated from among the living and appear immediately in the presence of the sovereign sun on the headquarters of the local universe. These are the mortals who fuse with their adjusters during mortal life, and such adjuster-fused personalities traverse space freely before being clothed with Urantia forms. These fused souls go by direct adjuster transit to the resurrection halls of the higher Urantia spheres, where they receive their initial Urantia investiture, just as do all other mortals arriving from the evolutionary worlds. This primary modified order of mortal ascension may apply to individuals in any of the planetary series, from the lowest to the highest stages of the adjuster fusion worlds, but it more frequently functions on the older of these spheres after they have received the benefits of numerous sojourns of the divine suns. With the establishment of the planetary era of light and life, many go to the universe Urantia worlds by the primary modified order of translation. Further along in the advanced stages of settled existence, when the majority of the mortals leaving a realm are embraced in this class, the planet is regarded as belonging to this series. Natural death becomes decreasingly frequent on these spheres long settled in light and life.
Presented by a Melchizedek of the Jerusalem School of Planetary Administration.